I'm Leanne Tran, psychologist who's worked with families whose kids don't fit the mould for almost 20 years. I've worked with children for decades, but I know parents are the real change makers when it comes to their kids. Having 3 kids of my own means I know it's not easy. Parent Like a Psychologist is all about simplifying how you support your kids with psychology information filtered through years of experience to take you from overwhelmed to confident. Come on in. Hello, welcome to another episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. Today we're talking about autism support at school. A little while ago I talked about how to support ADHD kids at school, and that was a pretty popular episode, so I figured maybe it's worth talking about autism at school. It's really hard for parents, I think, to know how to help their kids in a different environment. Um, we don't get to see them there a lot. Before COVID, I remember when my kids were little, parents would go in a lot. You could be invited to go in for things like reading groups and all of that kind of stuff. And uh, post COVID, my kids also kind of were out of that little early primary zone. So I'm not quite sure if that's still the case or not. But I found it really helpful to go in and see what schools were actually like. But I guess that's from a psychologist lens as well, where I had the benefit of understanding what kids need and what would help them. And then I could see whether that's going to fit or not fit in a particular classroom. But what I'm talking about today is the ways that the types of support that kids do need and how that is what you can advocate for your kids at school. There's also a resource I've got on my website in the free section, which is about how to advocate for kids at school as well. And it goes through, I guess, some ideas about, well, firstly, it's got some links in there to some resources provided by the Queensland state government. I'm in Queensland, so by the Education Department, about it's a little kind of guide that you can use with your child to go through um, a discussion about school and to think about what is hard for your kid at school and then what they think might help them. So then you have an idea of what your kid might need. Obviously, depending on the age of your child, that affects how much insight they can have. But then you will know your child and can match what you think they need as well into this document that gives you then a bit of a guide about what to ask for at your school. And so the link is in the document there so that you can use it if you want to. And it's a way to just take these ideas and turn them into a bigger conversation with your child that then can lead to a conversation with your child's school. And so I will link the website into the show notes section here, but it's learn.leannetran.com.au/free. And it's the guide for advocating for what your child needs at school. So I'm going to focus a little bit, or I'm going to focus on autism today, but these ideas are not specific to autism. It's just they're common in autism. Your child might need extra things, and that's okay. They might need not everything on this list, and that's okay as well. Every child needs something different. And so that's why lots of the schools do individual education plans. It's looking at what your child specifically needs and how the school can meet it in the school environment. So today I want to talk through why school can be challenging for autistic kids, the types of support that actually helps, and how to collaborate with your child's teachers and school staff. Okay, so sorry, my notes are all over the place here. Um, that's okay. So let's what why school's hard for autistic kids? That was going to be the next part. So primary schools are I mean, I don't know if you can just think back to or just, think about a regular day this week that you had as a parent where you're trying to wrangle your kid, or maybe you've got more than one kid, and how difficult and chaotic it can get. Then multiply it by about 5 for the classroom. Actually, it's probably as they get bigger, it's probably more. It's like multiply it by 10. And then you got to multiply it by like 100. And that's what the level of chaos that's going on in a primary school at any one day. Um, it's really busy, it's really noisy, and it can be unpredictable. And that's really hard for autistic brains. It's built around neurotypical expectations. Um, I'm not sure that schools have changed for sure, but most classrooms are still operating in that way of a teacher, the group of kids, and we've been doing that for um, you know decades and decades, probably centuries almost. But we know that it doesn't suit all kids. So the challenges for your autistic kids in that environment are going to be things like sensory overload. Primary school classes in particular are really noisy, and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of um, visual stuff. There's often things on most surfaces and pictures on most walls. Other things like yeah, the kids moving around in the classroom as well. So there's lots of bodies, there's lots of movement, there's lots of noise. Um, Things like lights also might be an issue, fluorescent lights and that kind of thing. So that's going to create overwhelm for a lot of autistic kids. Not all, but a lot. The next thing is that there is social exhaustion that can come from that. So navigating peers, other people, um, just first of all, because of the number of kids in the room, but second of all, then interacting with the kids socially. Also, things if they're required to work together with a partner or in groups. And then things like the unstructured times, like morning tea and lunch, the breaks that kids have, that can be a challenge to navigate as well. Executive functioning strategies is, oh, sorry, struggles is another area. So, school involves a lot of executive functioning. It involves us knowing how to start tasks, to complete them, how to organize ourselves. And the biggest one, I think, is transitioning as well, which is an executive functioning kind of function, moving from one activity to the next activity. And kids are doing that all day in primary school because they move through one activity to the next, particularly when kids have because the younger kids are, the lower their attention span is, which means they're changing tasks more often. Outside of that, there are bigger transitions as well, like moving from, the classroom to the playground and the playground back. It's also specialist lessons like going to PE or going to music and coming back. So there's a lot of transitioning. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was masking as well. So this, by where I mentioned before that school's built around those neurotypical expectations, and that means that kids kind of get this sense that a certain way of behaving is required. I I talk about it as like it's peer pressure, really, is what it is, and I don't know if anyone else has found this. Potentially not if your kids are autistic, that it might not flow the same, but for a lot of typical kids, I will often hear parents say that don't nap at home, but they'll nap at kindy, and that to me is the a great example of that peer pressure that happens, and it's not always in a negative way like drugs and vaping and stuff, but it's because kids look around, everyone else is sleeping. It's the expectation, the environment set up for it, and so kids just end up sleeping. And when you think about it that way in the masking sense, it's that teachers aren't overtly asking your kid to just pretend that they're not autistic, but your kid is looking around and seeing everyone else is doing it a certain way. There's that unwritten expectation that they conform to what's happening around them. And so that makes school really hard. It takes lots of energy that could be directed otherwise to maybe managing their emotions, or to learning. And so you will find at the end of the day that they are way tireder than any other or than a lot of other kids. So these challenges are often invisible um, to the yeah, to the untrained observer, I was going to say, but I guess it's that, we can tell that they're happening, but you don't always see it. And so they drain your kids' energy, affects their learning, affects their behavior, but it's not always seen. Typically, what's seen by teachers and schools is more externalizing behaviors and that kind of thing. So if kids are having trouble sitting still, if they aren't doing their work, or if they're being disruptive, that will be noticed more. Um, I think we should never just look at the behavior as the problem. We should always look at what the underlying need is. But my point I want to make, I guess, is that even if kids look like they're getting through the school day okay because they're not acting out, they may well be struggling with this stuff and need support at school. I never see it as a case if kids are doing okay at school and then melting down after school, that it's just because, you know, they can handle school and home just doesn't have the right behavior support. It's more a fact that they haven't been able to regulate all day, and then now they just can't manage anymore. So I think it's really important to advocate for your kids' needs to be met at school, even if they're not showing challenges at school. So what real support looks like. Um, I think it can look it's different for every child. And so talk with your child or just go with the suggestions that you think your child needs based on what works for them at home. The first um the first thing is having predictability and routine. And so for this it means but it's also about how you communicate those things. So having a timetable is really important. It lets your child know what to expect for the day. Having them presented visually is great, particularly absolutely before kids can read, but then even beyond that as well, visual supports are often really helpful for autistic kids and ADHDers and anxious kids and everyone else. But um, having predictability that's communicated in a visual way, clear transitions so that your child knows what to expect, it's easier to handle. The second thing is sensory support. So that might be in order to minimize the impact of lots of sensations around them, like noise reducing headphones, a quiet place to reset. It could mean also doing the transitions in a different way. So, for example, if all the kids come into class first and then your child comes in once they're all a bit settled and calm, rather than coming in when the whole group's trying to transition in this noisy, movement filled, messy way. It could also be in terms of giving your child the sensory input that they need, like movement. So that can be allowing your kids to have stuff to fidget with, giving them movement breaks, letting them stand up or use a standing desk or walk around the class. And I think these things are good to put in proactively. So it shouldn't just be once your kid looks dysregulated, they're offered a movement break. It should be if they need movement, then they get a chance to do it like a couple of times a day or however many they need. Don't wait for a problem and then try to fix it. Like be proactive in meeting your kids' needs, or, I mean, I'm saying you, but if the teachers can be, then your kid's going to be in a better place to learn and be calm. The next thing I think is to use explicit teaching, and I think this is about not assuming that kids will pick stuff up. Um, Using explicit teaching for them about what's going to happen for the day, what they should expect, maybe even using social stories if that helps, or some visual information. Um, Not assuming that they're going to pick up on the social cues, and so explicitly explaining what should happen. The other thing is support for tasks that require flexible thinking. And so this might be helping with managed changes, with rules, and with group dynamics. It's not so much about teaching your child how to be more flexible, it's about recognizing that for them, flexibility is hard. So, what extra support can be put around that? Maybe some of the expectations to be flexible can be reduced so that your child doesn't have to constantly be trying to do something that's hard for them. Um, but then some other things could be put in place to help them, like letting them know ahead of time that changes are going to come up, like for example, relief teachers and changes to the classroom. That can also help with transition from one year to the next as well, to just recognize it's going to be a harder transition. And so to plan it earlier and for teachers to let your child have more exposure to, um, or yeah, for a longer transition plan, it might be more notice, more opportunities to meet the teacher, more opportunities to visit the classroom. And so it's a longer, more staged process of learning about the transition rather than just finishing school one year and arriving in a new place with a new person the next year. And the last bit I wanted to talk about was support with emotional regulation as well. So, this is about your teacher noticing the signs of overload early, and using some of the co-regulation strategies that help your child at home. If you don't know what these are, that's a great time to seek some support. OTs can help with that, sometimes speech pathologists, psychologists as well. And um, that's a thing I can help you with if you join one of my programs, because you'll need to kind of know what works for your child, or if you don't, like, the professionals in your support team can help so that then you can advocate for the school to do that. And so an example is for them to recognize some signs of when your child might need an extra break. Also, for your child to have a way of communicating when they need a break and they need help. And then for the school to have some ideas in mind about um, what those breaks or strategies should look like, and they need to know how to help your child use them. I want to make a point at the end of this little section on the what supports can help, is to say that they're not extras. These are essential things that help your child be able to learn and to feel safe. So I always frame it to teachers as a way that these things are required to allow your child to access the curriculum. All kids have a right to education. And so if we say that they need support to access that education, it really brings it home that these are essential supports. They're not extras on top of everything else. So, how can you work with your child's school? As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, there is a guide that can help you with this. I think it's about being proactive. You're it depends and varies from school to school and teacher to teacher about how much communication you might get. But everyone I talk to is worried about being that parent. Um, I don't think you need to be. I think if you just reach out and try to be proactive and say, I know some things about my kid that's going to help them be able to participate in class and learn, and I'd really love to share them with you. That's great. And be collaborative and try and, you'll have ideas and see if you can work out together with the teacher how they could fit into the classroom environment. You can ask about the school's sensory environment, like what it's like and what your child seems to struggle with. If it's transition, ask for their transition plan. How they're trying to support your child and see if you can have input into that, and ask about support staff as well, so that you can understand what resources the school has that are available to your child. You can share strengths as well, not just challenges. So talk about what your child really likes at school, what seems to be working really well for them, and so teachers can expand on that as well. And then, as I mentioned before, I use phrases like this helps my child access learning, um, and yeah, that really is the key, rather than everyone worries about being that parent and saying this is what we want, or they don't want to be um seen as a problem. But I think if you can say, look, these are the things that are going to help them access learning and manage and participate in the classroom, um you're really coming at it from an advocacy point of view rather than being um perceived as demanding. And I think it's important to know that and trust that you're the expert in your child as well. And so when you partner with the school, they learn how to support your child as well. Um, I always take the approach when I write recommendations in assessment reports that I do, that I have information that can help about the child and meeting their needs. I don't know how exactly that can fit in the classroom environment, because that's where we need the collaboration and working together to happen. But I will strongly say what I think they need in order to be able to manage school, and don't be afraid either to say that they need this to be able to manage school for their well-being. If school is stressful and difficult, then that your child still needs help, and even if they're doing well academically, if they're breaking down at the end of each day and they're struggling at the end of every term, then they need some more support, and it's a valid reason to have support so that they can have better well-being. So if school feels like a battle, firstly, know that you're not alone. It's not a sign of failure, and I do have some resources that can help you on the website. Um, if your child has ADHD as well, they do have programs that can help support your ADHD primary schooler and teenager. And both of those programs have a module in there about how to advocate for support at school and what the right support might be and that kind of thing. And um, so there's lots of support out there if you need somebody to help you understand what your child might need. Um, we've talked a little bit about the why it's hard, why school is hard for autistic people, and then what things can help. And hopefully, you feel empowered to then have this conversation with your child's school so that they can meet your child's needs, so that they can not just survive school, but to really thrive in that environment. Um, Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that it has been helpful, and I would really love to hear if there are other things you'd like to know about the school environment. As a parent, it's often really hard being outside it. So if there's any way that I can help, please do get in touch, because that is my goal, to make sure all parents have the tools that they need to support their child and meet their needs. I will hopefully have you join me next time when we chat about something completely different. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. If you found it helpful, please share on Instagram so other parents can benefit too, and tag me at Leanne Tran Psychology so that I can say a big thank you. Head over to leannetran.com.au to join the village for bite-sized psychology tips straight to your inbox. I really hope this podcast has brought a new perspective and you a step closer towards a calm parent and a thriving child. Have a delightful day.